Now, I warned you in early September that we were hitting key support levels and could find a bottom either with this low right here or pull back towards it to test this low and support zone right here. I've talked about another Bitcoin bottom. Now, again, when I say that, I'm talking about a short-term bottom. I believe Bitcoin has topped. I believe that Bitcoin peaked back in March. I do believe that Bitcoin is going to get a Fed pivot rally. Great Scott, did you hear what I just said? The Fed is going to pivot next week, meaning that they're going to start cutting rates. Bitcoin will likely pull back ahead of that pivot, probably rally further. It is likely going to go up to this trend line right here into this 68,000, maybe 69,000 area if it overthrows it a little bit, probably make a larger divergence with the S&P 500. Stock market likely going to peak. Do yourself a favor surrounding the Fed pivot. Do yourself a favor, and I'll link the video at the end of this one. Go watch the video I just made that we're going to get the Fed pivot rally. S&P is going to move to a new all-time high. It's likely going to get another divergence with Bitcoin shortly after, and historically it's been 15 to 19 trading sessions after the stock market. We get the Fed pivot, the rate cut out of the Fed. Stock market peaks in 2000 with the counter-trend rally. It had already peaked and dropped 20%, 19.5% I should say. Found it back up for 3.5 weeks. The rally just prior to that, so it's a little bit longer, but the rate cut, we rallied for 3.5 weeks, and then the stock market crashed. 2000 after having already peaked and dropped, a counter-trend with the Fed pivot, and then the Fed pivot marked the top in 2007. Go watch the video. Bitcoin is probably going to pull back. As I talked about in my last couple of updates, Bitcoin's got a good shot, if it can get above the 100 period here, of coming back up into this area and still forming much larger divergence with the S&P 500. Again, I talked about the bottom, Bitcoin's average price, the trend line of support, and at the 50-week moving average. And I've been telling you this in several videos now. Bitcoin's in a bottoming process here, and again, it's probably going to pull back. We had a big rally on Friday. And after what, a 19% drop here, we've rebounded back up and we're retracing, probably pull back and then maybe make an attempt to get back above the 100 period moving average. If you do that and you can't stay above it, that's bearish. Above the 100 period, you break all these levels of resistance I've talked about, clear 69,000, and legitimate breakout, then be a sign of strength. My guess is that's not going to be the case. Majority of people believe Bitcoin's in this new bull market and it's going to go on, 2025, 2026, and on into 2027. The stock market, well, the problem is you're going to have a recession. Watch the video I just posted, which I'll link at the end of this video. Recession indicators are warning that we're probably 3 to 6 months away from a recession. The market's going to top, Bitcoin's going to top. We're going to begin to price that in. If that happens, you're going to get a Fed pivot rally. Did you hear what I just said? I didn't say a Fed pivot crash. I said a Fed pivot rally. And it's already started with the bottoming process developing. We will probably pull back. We've come now back up to the 50 period, but the 10 and 20 are still below the 50. It's turning up, but it's still below the 20. Probably pull back, and then, again, probably attempt a larger rally. I've been saying, if Bitcoin starts losing this area and taking out this low, taking out the 50-week moving average, Bitcoin's average price, taking out the lower boundary of the channel and staying below it, Bitcoin's in serious trouble for the short term. Yes, is it's going to pull back or go to the 100 and pull back probably, and then we're going to attempt to go to 68, 69,000, where I think the topping process complete and will form large divergence with the S&P 500. We have this Bitcoin average price that we're bouncing off of. The moving averages that we're rallying into are still in a bearish arrangement. Probably more work to be done. Like I said, listen carefully. Are you listening? We're going to get a Fed pivot rally. It's likely leading into that. But we'll probably see a pullback ahead of the Fed pivot. Then we'll get a big rally with the Fed. Ahead of the Fed pivot, we'll probably get the pullback next few days of the weekend, the next week or so. A likelihood. Now, we may just go parabolic, maybe. Likely because of the bearish arrangement of the moving averages, you're probably going to get a pullback. We're going to get the rally in all likelihood. Everybody will become convinced that this is it now. Bitcoin will likely peak in early to mid-October or so, late September, as early as late September, likely early October, maybe mid-October, and begin to top. But Bitcoin could peak ahead of the stock market. This is where I think Bitcoin is going. And again, that's assuming that these levels of support that I've talked about can hold, which I think that, again, bouncing off these key levels of support I've been talking about, see momentum turn back up. Moving averages are still bearish. We'll probably get the pullback and then try to go higher. But the 50 is still going to remain below the 200, the green line, below the black line, the 50, the 200, and the death cross in all likelihood. And we'll probably get above the 100 period briefly and then drop back below it. Very similar to what we did back over here. Here, a little bit shorter, but probably a little bit longer. And we'll get a Fed pivot rally, which I believe we will. Make sure you watch the video all the way through. I'll be talking about the bullish signals and the bottoming process for Bitcoin later in the video. We're seeing bullish things happen. Warning you about a Bitcoin bottom over the last several videos. So make sure you watch the video all the way through. Please support the channel with the link directly below. That allows me to be able to provide you this information. The indicators, if you like the charts, please support the channel. I don't have any sponsors, just a direct relationship with you, but I do need to hear from you. If you like the indicators, if you like the charts, you want this information. It's a lot of time and effort to do all this. Well, if you could take a moment to help out, I would really appreciate it. Follow the link below to take you to a secured site. You can donate any amount you want, but I do need to hear from you. Just take a moment to consider helping out today. Now, currently, as we're a couple hours into the Saturday session, Bitcoin is down slightly, down 0.14%. It rallied. Winning streak with the market. We had a winning streak with Bitcoin after the previous week's losing streak, and in 2.5 weeks dropping 19+%. Bitcoin was up on Friday, up just over 4% to close above the 50-period moving average. Again, the moving averages are in a bearish arrangement, so do keep that in mind. Keep talking about in every video. We're bouncing out Bitcoin's average price here in the daily time frame, which we did previously over here. Bitcoin bounced off the 50-week moving average right here. Their previous week's low, rebounded back up after Bitcoin losing 19.31%. We rebounded off of those lows and then building upon that rally, recouping the previous week's losses. We're recouping that and we're gaining another 10.21% this week so far. Bitcoin is trapped between the 50-week moving average and the 20-week moving average. It dropped below the 20-week, the blue line over here. Got rejection at it. I told you over here, Bitcoin was bottoming. We're going to all the way to the 70,000 area. We hit it right on the nose and reversed hard. I talked about that doji being followed by a reversal bar for a 3-week evening star reversal. That did happen, and we saw that dramatic 29% drop in 2 weeks. I talked about closing short position because we hit key support levels. I talked about a rally up to the golden pocket and the 78.6 Fibonacci. Test the 20 to test the 100 period in the daily. That's exactly what we did. Reversed there. Rejection at the 20-week moving average. The 10 is the red line. It's still below the 20. We're trapped between support at the 50. Rejection at the 20. Again, we could test the 20 again. Even go above this level to test these highs back over here and here and over here and here. And go back and slam up into that trend line that I talked about. And hit the 69,000 level, hit another even larger divergence with the S&P 500, which is what happens. Bitcoin tops, stock market tops, they diverge. They've already done, and they're probably going to do again. As I keep saying, if this rally doesn't continue on and we get a post-Fed or a Fed pivot rally, as I'm talking about, and we come back and we lose this 50-week and we lose this low, and Bitcoin's in serious trouble right here, right now. All about support and resistance. But I told you, if we can build upon this or even pull back and then build upon it further, you can come up and get back above our 20-week moving average and still come back and slam up into this trend line before coming back down and collapsing below the 50-week moving average. If you do that, that's going to be the final nail in the coffin. That's going to be extremely bearish for Bitcoin. Again, let me continue to repeat. The bears are in control in the weekly time frame. The Bitcoin price still may try to get a larger counter trend, but it likely peaked back over here in March. So let me just be clear about that. That's extremely unpopular to say, but it has to happen for to turn things around. You've got to get above 69,000. You've got to, we've had 8 failed attempts to do it, by the way. You've got to be able to get above the 20-week, remain above it. The 10 weeks got to get back above the 20-week. Got to get a breakout above these areas. You got to break this downward trend line. You've got to move to a new high and never drop below 69,000 again. That would be bullish for Bitcoin. The bulls have not been able to do that. So right now, so far, is rallying up to the 10-week moving average. Now, again, I think we'll probably attempt to test the 20 and probably overthrow it. I think we'll see a pullback. I do believe, listen carefully, I believe we're going to get a Fed pivot rally that will end up giving us a bigger rally once we get the Fed cutting rates, which I think will be 0.5%. Now, it's been fluctuating between 1/4 and 1/2. Once 1/2, my video, I'll talk about that. I would really recommend that you go watch my video about the coming rate cut, and the stock market will fully help you understand the stock market is in a topping process, and Bitcoin is likely as well. Pull back, we can get a bigger rally with the Fed, but like I said, Bitcoin has likely peaked. So the bulls can change all the signals back to bullish and keep them that way. Now, first of all, we have people going, oh, it's a breakout, it's a breakout. Well, you're coming right back up to resistance. It's not a breakout above resistance. Remember, when we broke through here, we dropped right back down below this shaded area, which is the resistance, the lower end of the resistance and the upper end of the resistance. We got above it and it failed. You got a lower high. Now, with this last sell-off, we came up to this resistance. As the 50 and the 200 were getting a death cross, we turned off of it. Eventually got back above there, tried to get above the 100, but we stalled at this level of resistance. So, again, we're stalling here. The 50 period is at this level. We're just above the 50 period, and we're at this level of resistance. Again, we'll probably get a reaction here, pull back, but then maybe try to break above this level, and again, come up into that 68 or 69,000 level. Should we be able to clear the 100 period moving average and the 200 period moving average, then you might be able to get above this upper end of the resistance right here. On a positive note, we did get the RSI back above 50. If it drops back below it, again, you can get a pullback here, or go up to the 100 period and get a pullback, one or the other. The MACD got a bullish cross, but it's still right here at the center line. I talked about divergences developing here, and again, we had almost 2 equal lows right here, so it's a Class B divergence there on the RSI and the MACD. Now, this low is slightly lower. This is $54,031. This is the 53,954 area. So it's slightly lower, but almost equal levels there. So I have to classify it as a Class B, but again, oftentimes you get the equal lows, and that's a Class B divergence, but slightly lower there, just by a few bucks, has given us this divergence. So again, we don't have to come back and take this level out to form a divergence. We already have one here. You're probably going to get a pullback because the moving averages are still in a bearish arrangement. And you're coming right into the lower end of the resistance again for a test. You know, it was support, it was support, it was support, support, support. We broke it here, it became resistance, got back above it, dropped below it here, it became resistance, turned down off of it, got back up into the upper end of the resistance, then we came back and it was more resistance here, and now here we are testing it yet again. Not only is Bitcoin's average price right here, not only is the 50-week moving average here that we're bouncing off of, but you're also bouncing this trend line right here, this lower boundary parallel to the upper boundary. Now again, if we move higher, that's coming in at the 68,000 area. If we overthrow it, 69,000, which is, again, 2021 peak that we keep turning off of. We've made 8 failed attempts to try to clear it. We have not been able to do it. Again, I pointed out we broke this trend line right here. As trend lines break, you tend to get a trend going in the other direction. I've talked about the trend line here breaking. We went down, and then we broke that downward trend line. We got an upward trend line. That broke, downward trend line, and so on and so forth. So here, we broke this trend line, we dropped, and now the trend line that developed there, we broke above it. So again, it stands to reason we're going to develop a new uptrend, probably take us up into this area. Now, we have a trend line. If we connect the low over here And the low here, you have a trend line where if we pull back to it, that could act as support, or we can exclude the shadow right there, and it would be a little bit higher. So those are the trend lines I'll be watching if we get a pullback over the weekend or on into early next week ahead of the Fed pivot. We'll see a pullback at some point and then probably get a bigger rally in all likelihood. That's what I believe will likely be the case. Bouncing off Bitcoin's average price, we're bouncing off this lower boundary trend line, we're bouncing off the 50-week moving average, but it doesn't change anything. The moving averages are all in a bearish arrangement still. 20 and 50, 50 and the 200, their relationship, 50 and the 100 is below the 200, it's dropping. All bearish stuff. I'm telling you exactly what I think is going to happen. We're going to pull back at some point. We go higher first and hit the 100 or overthrow it and then pull back, but if we get rejection off the 50, you start getting a pullback, probably ahead of the Fed pivot, and get a Fed pivot rally. The Fed pivot day will probably be a big up day. Bitcoin and the stock market. Everybody will be declare, now Bitcoin's going to really go. Bitcoin will top out, start coming back down and crashing below these levels, and the Bitcoin's average price and the 50-week moving average and the moon boys will stand there in disbelief. They continue to tell us that all these sell-offs, this distribution we're seeing, oh, that's not going to happen. But yet it keeps happening. Distribution after distribution after distribution. Is likely get another leg down, continue the bear market. It's not a new bull market. In all likelihood, it is a very large bear market and a bear market rally. Now, you cannot like the things I'm saying, but again, Bitcoin's so bullish. Why are all the moving averages in such a bearish arrangement? Why do we have a series of lower highs and lower lows? Now, if we go above this level, the moon boys will declare, oh, we got a higher low and a higher high. Here we go. But yet, if we don't move above, the series of lower highs that have happened, then again, this is just a larger counter trend, like what I'm looking at on the NASDAQ, where you got potentially an ABC move. So am I looking for a Fed pivot crash or a Fed pivot rally? I'm looking for a Fed pivot rally. Do I think Bitcoin will probably get some kind of pullback to the Fed pivot? Probably. I think Bitcoin has a good shot at going back up here for a test? Yes. I think Bitcoin's in a topping process, about to enter the new phase of the bull market. Well, it's in a topping process, but like I said, the bulls can get us to a new high and meet the requirements of not dropping back below 69,000 again, then my signals are all going to turn back to bullish. I want to continue to point this out to you. Again, the stock market is stock market's in this lower window, the S&P 500 down here in the weekly time frame. This is Bitcoin here in the weekly time frame in the upper window. They're diverging from one another already. We're likely going to see another divergence point. The S&P is probably going to go make a new high, get a divergence, and Bitcoin is probably going to come up into this area right around 68, 69,000 or so and get another reference point of a divergence. It'll probably pull back. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it just goes parabolic. We'll see what happens. Warning you about a Bitcoin bottom surrounding these levels. I told you last update we got a bullish signal triggered and we bounced off the support levels in the video before that. Talked about this at great length and detail. You can clearly see in this chart, Bitcoin forms divergences with the S&P 500 at turning points like we had over here at the 2021 top right here. Again, Bitcoin diverged at other turning points. Back over here in 2017, there was a divergence in the most recent price action, and then went over here, 2018, and a larger divergence between the two that gave us that sell-off for the market in 2018, and the final blow for Bitcoin to finish the bear market. Started the bull market, divergences in early 2019, again in 2020, and then the larger divergence between 2019 and 2020 between down here at the S&P and with Bitcoin, and it led to a 71% sell-off, so on and so forth. Again, you got a problem. They're diverging from one another. This is what happens at market tops. Watch my video on the S&P 500. Again, I'll link it at the end of this video. Understand why the S&P, the topping process, is probably going to move to a new high and then top out in early to mid-October, a few weeks after the Fed pivot. If Bitcoin manages to get back above the 100, the pink line, again, we can backtest this trend line again. We can go hit this trend line once again, the declining trend line up here. And again, also intersect, again, around the 68 or 69,000 area. Bitcoin follows the 100 period moving average. That's this pink line right here. It's below it right now. Tried to get back above it, it failed. Tried to get it back above it, it failed. Might try to get back above it again, continuing to backtest this trend line and diverging with the S&P 500 if we get a Fed pivot rally. We will. The risk is that we come back down to this trend line right here and eventually take it out. If we fail, we get above the 100 and drop right back below it. Bitcoin follows a 100 period moving average in the daily time frame, the 20-week moving average in the weekly time frame, which I'm talking about in this video. Watch my videos, you know that. Of those levels are bullish. The trick is staying above those levels. We haven't been able to do it, getting back above the 100 period or the 20-week moving average. They have staying power. Yes, in the weekly time frame, there's that Bitcoin's going to come back up, probably pull back ahead of the Fed pivot. We've had a rally of 10+% this week. We get some kind of a pullback, and then I think again you're going to make another attempt to get above that. If you do, again, I'll be watching the 20-week. If we can stay above it or not, I'll be watching conversions between the S&P and Bitcoin. The RSI again trying to get back above 50 right now. If the RSI moves above this peak right here, but price doesn't. Again, it might form a hidden bearish divergence right there. Just something I'm watching if we rally up towards the levels that I think we're going to rally up towards. Now the Bollinger Bands are starting to contract here. We're rallying back up. This is turning down. This is turning up. So again, if we were to pull back, could be setting up for, again, a test of the 69,000 area again. And early on here into the Saturday session, Bitcoin is down currently at the moment 0.36% after that 4% rally on Friday. Now, Bitcoin's 4-hour chart is still bearish. So again, we're likely going to see a pullback. Right now we're coming up just above the 50 period on the daily and up to the 400 period here on the 4-hour chart for Bitcoin. But take a look. Again, you still have the 50 below the 200, the black line there, okay? In the daily time frame, we still have the 10 below the 20, and both the 10 and 20 are still below the 50. So there's likely more work to be done. We gotten above the 50. We got above the 200. Now we're testing a 400 period. We'll probably pull back. The 50 is probably going to make its way to try to get back above the 200 as we pull back. Then we'll see if we come up to the center line with prime parameter and roll over, or if we roll over in negative territory sooner rather than later. Again, we can confirm a higher low if this low holds, and then again be set up for a Fed pivot rally. Fed pivot crash, a Fed pivot rally. More work to be done here in the 4-hour time frame. Now, I'm going to say it again. As I've been saying in my last several videos here, Bitcoin is in a bottoming process. Hitting key support, Bitcoin's average price, a 50-week moving average. Momentum signals begin to show up, and then we got a bullish buy signal when we confirmed this bar on September 10th. We confirmed that bar. We got a bullish buy signal for it. Tried to pull back a little bit, couldn't do it, but we saw momentum flip. I talked about in my last update. We saw the momentum line turn bullish. We got warning signs with this bullish B right here suggesting a short-term bottom. We got a little X right there at the same time on the 9th. The little buy signal is covering it. We saw the momentum flip. We saw the trend signal now flip with Friday's price action getting above this cloud. Again, this line represents a swing move. It's now turning back up to bullish. Balance of power is turning positive there on Friday. And also, we're now seeing the color, background color, flip back to green, representing the trend. So we're seeing trend signals flip. We'll probably see some kind of pullback. We don't have to. We could just go parabolic, but you'll probably get a pullback ahead of the Fed pivot and then an exaggerated rally on the Fed pivot. That's probably going to take us back towards, again, the trend line and towards 68 or 69,000. Momentum has flipped. You got a bullish buy signal. We'll probably see some type of pullback. We got the bullish signals back over here. We got a pullback. So we got another bullish signal. We got the bullish signal right here on July 5th. We actually got a pullback a few days later. Here we got the bottom and then the bullish signal. And not much of a pullback. We had almost a one-day pullback, but the dip was bought and we went higher. So we'll see if we get some kind of pullback. My guess is we will. But like I said, we're probably going higher. Say it again. Bitcoin is in a bottoming, short-term bottoming process that will likely take us towards 68 or 69,000. We're seeing bars reflecting momentum, turning back to bullish over the last few days since Thursday. Momentum flipping. The day before the momentum line flipped, the impulse line flipped right here. It's still bullish, and I talked about that. We're seeing with Friday's rally, we're seeing the momentum get back into the positive territory there. And again, if we get a pullback, but like I said, eventually I think we're coming up in here. We'll be watching. Can the bulls pull it off? Can they get above all this resistance levels? These resistance levels I've been talking about. As we're getting the Saturday session, we're getting a little T for a possible short-term top. Again, these signals are momentum, and they have done a very good job in marking tops, short-term bottoms. So again, this could be a short-term top. The signal could go away by the close. We'll be watching. But again, there is the possibility of a pullback at some point out of the Fed pivot, which is going to be next Wednesday. We'll get a 0.5% cut out of the Fed. Markets will likely be on fire because of that. Boy, that's bad, because if the Fed's cutting 0.5%, what does that say about the economy? If I bring it up close, again, this is bars reflecting the trend. They're back to green. If we pull back and they turn red, then again, it's going to show a sideways kind of a consolidation. Again, we cleared the cloud. This line represents a short-term trend. We're trying to get above it. Could still drop back below it. And if we, even if we pull back, signals are now trying to turn back to bullish with the trend. Again, could take us up into the 68, 69,000 area, or pull back, as I said, and take us up into this area more on into late September, early October, maybe mid-October. But again, that is what I think is happening.